Well, these guys made a fortune. In fact, my best example is Joseph P. Kennedy. Joseph Kennedy is well documented to have exited the market before October 1929, and by 1935, his value, because of his investments, went from $4 million to $180 million in wealth. I mean, he reported to even have shorted the market during the crash. You know, in the end, we'll never know the full position of the insiders because they're insiders. But how many coincidences do you need before you become skeptical? And it happens all over the place today, which is completely transparent. You know, I agree with Curtis Dow, FDR's son-in-law, when he stated, quote, "It was a calculated sharing of the public by the world money powers," when he addresses the crash of 1929 in his book, FDR, My Exploited Father-in-Law. And of course, Louis McFadden, made it very clear as well. It was a carefully contrived occurrence. International bankers sought to bring about a condition of despair so they might emerge as rulers of us all. And of course, they'll just dismiss McFadden as a racist and not pay attention to anything that he said. All right, let's see here. Running out of time. The next issue has to do with the abolition of gold and the gold seizure. Zeitgeist states that the Fed caused and fueled the depression while gold was stolen from the public, so gold could be abolished as the backing of the currency. Debunkers have moved forward to say, no, the gold standard wasn't removed until 1971 and everything in Zeitgeist is wrong, dismissing the point entirely without doing any research at all. Here's the deal. The gold standard referred to by Zeitgeist is the use of gold as a backing for U.S. currency. In other words, it is the internal standard, meaning it relates to U.S. currency only, and citizens were able to redeem their notes for actual gold. However, there was also an external standard, if you will, which the classic definition of a gold standard, which is, quote, a commitment by participating countries to fix the prices of their domestic currencies in terms of a specified amount of gold. During the 1800s, I'll skip that. This internal gold standard, that different from the prior external gold standard, which has to do with U.S. currency, effectively came to an end in 1933 when President Roosevelt outlawed private gold ownership except for purposes of jewelry. This is what Zeitgeist is talking about. America could no longer get gold for the U.S. currency. In 1933, with the cooperation of the U.S. Congress, Roosevelt then made it illegal for Americans to possess gold coins or bullion. He then took away the right of Americans to be able to exchange paper money for gold. That's why it had to be done. Now, the external standard that they're talking about has to do with the end of the Bretton Woods system, which occurred on August 15, 1971, under the Nixon administration. That is true, but that isn't what Zeitgeist is talking about. Now, as most of you know, all our currencies are in floating exchanges, which are manipulated by speculation, which is just insane. Number 13, well, that's actually not even a number, but I had the neighbor here. Actually, let me, since I have 8 minutes left before Acharya comes on, let me quickly scan this to find the best to point out. Okay, Federal Reserve as a private corporation. Debunkers say that the Federal Reserve is not a private corporation. It's under the strict guidance of Congress. Okay, Federal Reserve is technically a privately owned corporation as confirmed by a Federal Circuit Court in 1982. In Lewis versus the United States, U.S. Court of Appeals, Ninth Circuit District stated that, quote, the Federal Reserve banks are not federal instrumentalities for purposes of the FTCA, but are independent, privately owned, and locally controlled corporations. The Fed consists of 12 regional Federal Reserve banks owned by commercial member banks. The stock held by each commercial bank is proportional to its size. As far as the congressional oversight, the statements made is a mere technicality. The debunkers never look at the historical practice. They just look at what the Federal Reserve's website says. In a document entitled, Is the Fed Held Accountable? An Empirical Investigation of Congressional Oversight of Monetary Policy, which was done in 2006, which was done for a 2006 annual meeting of the American Political Science Association, the question of the Fed's controls and transparency were directly addressed in detail, and I suggest everyone read that. Let me give quickly a summation. Page 6 gives a clear summary of their concerns. It says, quote, monetary policy constitutes an unusual area of legislative oversight for two reasons. First, the standard means of legislative control of bureaucrats, i.e. budgetary appropriations, is absent as the Fed controls its own budget. Second, the scope of any oversight outside Congress is severely constrained by both the relative lack of transparency of monetary policy. In turn, let's listen to what Alan Greenspan has to say. Quote, in an FOMC meeting, we are an independent central bank in that our decisions are not subject to reversal by any other agency of the government. I'm going to state that again. Quote, we are an independent central bank in that our decisions are not subject to reversal by any other agency of the government. Our existence and ability to function, however, are subject to the acceptance by the public and a Congress who exhibit decidedly asymmetric propensities in favor of policy ease. God, I love Alan Greenspan. He was a genius with words. Listen to this sentence. Our existence and ability to function, however, are subject to acceptance by the public and Congress who exhibit decidedly asymmetric propensities in favor of policy ease. In other words, blah, the blah, the blah, blah, the blah, blah, blah. I just love this semantic bullshit that comes out of a lot of these guys' mouths. Alan Greenspan's amazing to listen to if you listen to what he says, because his words are absolutely empty. It's like watching a magician. It's amazing. But anyway, he makes it extremely clear beyond that in the sentence before that it's an independent thing. And there's a ton more that could be said. And I suggest people read this. The lack of transparency of the Fed is an outrage. I mean, Ron Paul has been trying to audit the Fed for years. They don't know what they're doing. The congressional oversight is extremely limited to basically minor approvals of what the Fed does. Let's see here. Another small point, Zeitgeist also addresses the idea that the central bank is unconstitutional. And debunkers say, no, it's not. It's constitutional. Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution lays out the powers of Congress, which is to coin money, regulate the value thereof, and of foreign coin, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is constitutional authority. Nowhere does it say in the Constitution that Congress can pawn off the coining or creation of money to a bank. To delegate constitutional authority or change the Constitution according to Amendment 5 would require a constitutional amendment, not some act. Now here's one more angle. Actually, I'm going to skip that one because we're running out of time. Okay, final one, the 16th Amendment. Hopefully I can have enough time to go through this. 16th Amendment is not been ratified, as noted in Zeitgeist. However, the debunkers will tell you that the evidence of that is virtually non-existent, and it's like a rumor or something to that effect. The only way you're going to be able to understand the 16th Amendment is to research it. I own Bill Benson's books, and after reading them a few years ago, it's very clear that the 16th Amendment was not even remotely close to legal ratification. It's 100% fraudulent and misleading what happened. In case you wonder who Bill Benson is, he was an investigator for the Illinois Department of Revenue and was responsible for investigating and assisting in prosecution of those violating the revenue and tax laws. So he wasn't just some random yahoo, as a lot of debunkers claim. In fact, based on official process. Okay, hold on one second. I'm still running out of time, so I'm going to paraphrase what I have my notes here. The issue is that none of the states ratify the amendment, and we're going to quickly go through why. First of all, Article 5 of the U.S. Constitution states that Congress has to have two-thirds of the House, two-thirds of both houses, and three-quarters of the states. Now, there's no disagreement that the amendment was ratified in the House and the Senate, but the three-quarters required for the states to ratify it was not done. It has to be done in an extremely strict way. You have to have it, and think about the importance of an amendment to the Constitution. Each amendment must be in precise language. In my notes, I talk about this cataclysmically. I'm going to jump straight down to the issues that are relevant. The language must be extremely precise in any amendment that's given to the states from the government, from the federal government. The states cannot change anything, and the amendment cannot contradict a state's existing constitution. The official amendment was 30 words in one sentence, very simple. As per Benson's multi-year study, and he acquired 17,000 officially certified legal documents, he got every single one of them. It became extremely clear that almost all states were in violation of all three of the things I just mentioned. Kentucky didn't even approve it. Violation of Kentucky's Constitution. Two aspects right there that are not denoted. In South Carolina, a violation of Article 5, Section 3 of their state constitution. The words were completely changed by the states. They changed the word lay to levy, which is extremely dramatic if you look those up. They also failed to return it in a certified way. There are many other violations. In Illinois, the word enumeration was changed to renumeration, which is a massive typo. They deleted the entire preamble, and they did not follow any of the guidelines that were required by their Constitution to make it official. There's procedures that go on both levels, the Constitution itself and the state Constitution. If they don't follow the procedures, it doesn't go through.